Hey class, we're back with another lesson on ancient Mesopotamia, and today we're talking about the ziggurat. This is a ziggurat here. It's like a big step pyramid. We talked about Egypt before, uh, so it's kind of similar to a pyramid, to a step pyramid from Egypt. You know, they had all these step pyramids, and up here they had a shrine to the gods, and they had a shrine to the gods, and they thought, you know, the further up it was, closer they were to their gods. And they would perform rituals and sacrifices. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the sacrifices, but I did mention the other day, if you want to see something that was similar to it, you go to the movie Apocalypto, and you can see what they did. Although that was the Aztecs, they did similar stuff to the Aztecs then too. This is what we're talking about today. The ziggurat. It was a religious temple that was in the middle of their cities. It was at the center of each major city in Mesopotamia was a large structure. It was called the ziggurat, like I said, and it was built to honor the main god of the city, because each city had a different main god. Each city in it did. They prayed to a different god. You know, some would be the sun god, some would be. It just depended. You know, Hammurabi was the sun god because Shamash is the one that supposedly handed him the code of Hammurabi. So, but it started, you know, the tradition of building it was started by the Sumerians, all right? But other civilizations, so the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Syrians, they also built these ziggurats, and they were huge. This is one that's been rebuilt today. They've kind of rebuilt it. Oops, sorry, y'all. Here we go.
Ziggurat. At the center of each major city in Mesopotamia was a large structure called a ziggurat. The ziggurat was built to honor the main god of the city. The tradition of building a ziggurat was started by the Sumerians, but other civilizations of Mesopotamia, such as the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians, also built ziggurats.
So they look like, what do they look like? They look like a step pyramid. Like I said, this is a step pyramid in Egypt. And if you look at it, it's very similar to this. Now, this one's a little more detailed than that one because that's worn down. It's worn down. That's what they look like now. That it probably looks a whole lot different 3,000 years ago in Egypt. But this is what they look like. The same picture that I had at the very beginning of the lesson. You know, they would have anywhere from 2 to 7 levels. All right, and each level would be smaller than the one before, and it would be square at the shape of the base. If you look down here, it'd be square down here. And like I said, they would have a shrine up here on top.
What did they look like? Ziggurats looked like a step pyramids. They would have anywhere from 2 to 7 levels or steps. Each level would be smaller than the one before. Typically, the ziggurat would be square in shape at the base.
So some ziggurats are believed to have been huge. Okay, very very big. All right. The largest ziggurat was one that was in Babylon, and its recorded dimensions showed that it was 300 feet tall. All right, it had 7 levels, and it was also 300 feet by 300 feet square at the base of it. So this is what a diagram of it would look like. It was huge. The one in Babylon was.
How big did they get? Some ziggurats were believed to have been huge. Perhaps the largest ziggurat was one at Babylon. Recorded dimensions show it had 7 levels and reached a height of nearly 300 feet. It was also 300 feet by 300 feet square at its base.
All right. So, like I said, the ziggurat was a temple to the main god of the city. All right. Each city in Mesopotamia had a primary god. Marduk, the god of Babylon. Enki was the god of Eridu. And Ishtar was the goddess of Nineveh. I guess I'm saying that right. I'm not sure. All right. So, the ziggurat showed, hey, this is dedicated. This city is dedicated to that god, whatever god it was. So, and if you look right here, you got more diagrams of it. This another what I mean, it was huge. A lot of them were huge.
Why did they build them? The ziggurat was a temple to the main god of the city. Each city in Mesopotamia had a primary god. For example, Marduk was the god of Babylon, Enki was the god of Eridu, and Ishtar was the goddess of Nineveh. The ziggurat showed the city was dedicated to that god.
So, if you look right here, this is the top of a ziggurat. This is what it might have looked like. You had prisoners down here. They had rituals, and they also performed sacrifices. All right, they would sacrifice animals. They would sacrifice people in some cases. All right, and they built them real high because they wanted that shrine to be as close to the heavens as possible. So, this is what it looked like. If you want to get a good look at it, at what it might look like, the movie Apocalypto, there's a scene in there. I can't show it to you, but I can tell you to go. If you want to go watch it, you can go watch it. That shows what it would have been like. Kind of, although the Aztecs that were doing that, and this is in the Middle East, it was kind of similar.
Why did they build them? Continued. At the top of the ziggurat was a shrine to the god. The priests would perform sacrifices and other rituals here. They built them high because they wanted the shrine to be as close to the heavens as possible.
So, are there any ziggurats left? There's some left, okay, but a lot of them have been destroyed over the years. All right, and the famous huge ziggurat of Babylon that I talked about earlier, it was in ruins by the time Alexander the Great conquered the city in 330 BC, and we'll talk more about him when we talk about the Persian Empire and all that. So, but the ziggurat of Zanbil is one of the last surviving ziggurats, and some of them's been reconstructed. Like this one's been reconstructed here, and somewhat rebuilt, so you can at least get a glimpse of what they look like before.
Are there any ziggurats left? Most of the ziggurats have been destroyed over the past several thousands of years. The famous huge ziggurat of Babylon was said to have been in ruins by the time Alexander the Great conquered the city in 330 BC. The ziggurat of Zanbil is one of the last surviving ziggurats. Some ziggurats have been reconstructed or rebuilt. The ziggurat at the city of Ur is one that's been somewhat rebuilt.
All right. So, who started building ziggurats? Was it A, Sumerians, B, Babylonians, or C, Akkadians? It is A, the Sumerians started. The Sumerians were the first civilization, and they started it. The Sumerians were the ones that started it.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
What were ziggurats similar to or look like? What do they look like? Do they look like A, a skyscraper, B, a step pyramid, or C, a triangle pyramid? What did they look like? They look like a step pyramid.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a
step
winner.
pyramids in Egypt. So how tall were ziggurats? A, 50 feet, B, 100 feet, or C, some of the tallest were around 300 feet. It is C.
Ding, ding, ding.
Around 300 feet were some of the tallest ones. What were ziggurats a shrine to? Was it A, a shrine to their gods, B, dogs, or C, cats? It was A, a shrine to their gods.
Ding, ding, ding.
And each city had a different primary god that ziggurat was built in the center of their city, and it was a shrine to them, to whatever god it was. And number 5, what did priests perform at the top of the ziggurat? A, sacrifices and rituals, B, nothing, or C, concerts. A, they performed sacrifices and rituals.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
All right, that's all for today's lesson. Be sure to check out the link, the YouTube link, so you can see the video on the other YouTube links in Schoology, where you can check out the song, the parody songs for Mesopotamia to help you learn all this stuff. And I will be back next week with more Mesopotamia.